The music played softly, the sound of clinking glasses filled the air, and laughter echoed throughout the grand reception hall. It was the kind of night people would remember forever, the night Ethan Walker and Rachel Morgan vowed to spend the rest of their lives together. The bride looked stunning, her white gown shimmering under the chandeliers as she twirled in Ethan's arms for their first dance. Guests watched in awe, believing they were witnessing the start of a beautiful new chapter. But what no one knew was that behind Rachel's radiant smile was a secret, a dangerous, forbidden affair that had already sealed someone's fate. The celebration went on, drinks flowed freely, and the best man, Tyler Brooks, gave a heartfelt toast. To the crowd, it was a speech filled with love and admiration for his best friend and his new bride. But for Rachel it was something else entirely. Her eyes met Tyler's across the room just for a moment, long enough for a silent message to pass between them. The very man who was supposed to stand by Ethan's side was the one who had been standing in Rachel's bed. As the night went on, the joy in the air masked the tension that was building beneath the surface. Ethan, oblivious to the betrayal happening right under his nose, basked in the love of his friends and family. He had no idea that his wedding night, the night that was supposed to be the happiest of his life, would be his last. Then, in the early hours of the morning, the celebration turned to chaos. A frantic 911 call shattered the silence. Screams echoed through the hallway of the honeymoon suite. By the time police arrived, one person was dead, another was covered in blood, and the truth was just beginning to unravel. Was it a crime of passion, or was it something much more sinister? Welcome back to Crime Stories, where we dive deep into the most chilling true crime cases. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button so you never miss a story. And if you're already part of the Crime Stories family, welcome back. Now, let's uncover the truth behind the wedding that ended in blood. From the outside, Rachel Morgan and Ethan Walker were the kind of couple that made people believe in love stories. They met in high school, their romance blossoming in the way young love often does. Innocent, full of excitement, and seemingly unbreakable. Ethan was the charming, dependable boyfriend, the kind of guy who never missed an anniversary or forgot Rachel's favorite flowers. Rachel, on the other hand, was warm, loving, and fiercely devoted, or at least that's what everyone thought. Their relationship grew stronger over the years, surviving the typical struggles of young love. College didn't break them apart like it did for so many others. When Ethan got a job in finance and Rachel pursued her passion for interior design, they continued building their lives side by side. Friends and family often said they were meant to be. After all, they had stood the test of time. When Ethan proposed on a quiet beach at sunset, slipping a diamond ring onto Rachel's finger, no one was surprised. The engagement announcement was met with overwhelming joy. People couldn't wait for them to finally tie the knot. But as with so many picture-perfect love stories, there were cracks beneath the surface. Cracks no one seemed to notice. And one of those cracks had a name. Tyler Brooks had been Ethan's best friend since childhood. They grew up together, played on the same little league teams, and eventually became inseparable. If Ethan was the golden boy, the responsible, dependable one, Tyler was his opposite in many ways. He was confident, charming, and had a reckless edge that made him exciting to be around. But what made their friendship work was trust. Ethan trusted Tyler with everything. That trust extended to Rachel as well. Tyler was always around, part of their lives from the very beginning. He was at every important moment: Ethan's graduation, their engagement party, family gatherings. He was more than just Ethan's best friend, he was like a brother. Naturally, when it came time for the wedding, there was no question about who would be Ethan's best man. But what no one realized was that Tyler wasn't just standing next to Ethan on his wedding day, he had been standing dangerously close to Rachel in ways no one suspected. Looking back, there had always been little moments, small things that, at the time, didn't seem to mean much. A lingering glance between Rachel and Tyler when Ethan wasn't looking. A joke between them that seemed just a little too personal. The way Rachel laughed a little too hard at Tyler's comments, or the way he leaned in a little too close when he spoke to her. It wasn't something anyone would have noticed right away. After all, Tyler was Ethan's best friend. He had always been around, always had a place in their lives. But as the wedding day approached, those little moments became more frequent, more intense. There were the late-night messages. Rachel would tell herself they were innocent, just casual conversations, nothing serious. But deep down she knew better. The way her heart raced when she saw his name light up her phone, the way she found herself looking for him at gatherings, the way she couldn't ignore how different things felt when Ethan wasn't in the room. Tyler, for his part, knew the risks. He knew this was his best friend's fiancée, the woman Ethan planned to spend his life with. But he also knew that what was happening between him and Rachel wasn't just in his head. It was real. And that made it dangerous. By the time the wedding day arrived, Rachel and Tyler had crossed lines they could never undo. And yet, they went through with the ceremony. Rachel walked down the aisle in a white dress, smiling for the cameras, exchanging vows with Ethan as if she hadn't spent the night before wondering if she was making the biggest mistake of her life. Tyler stood at Ethan's side, playing the role of the best man, knowing that if Ethan ever discovered the truth, the friendship they had built over a lifetime would be shattered forever. But secrets have a way of revealing themselves. And this one wouldn't stay buried for long. Ethan and Rachel's wedding night was supposed to be the beginning of their forever. Instead, it would end in blood. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, Rachel Morgan found herself trapped in a dangerous game of deceit. One that had started as something small, something she thought she could control, but had now spiraled into something far more dangerous than she had ever anticipated. It began with late-night texts, harmless at first. Tyler Brooks would message her casually, a joke about wedding stress, a sarcastic comment about Ethan's obsession with planning every last detail. She would reply, laughing to herself, feeling comforted by the ease of their conversations. It felt safe, innocent, like nothing more than friendship. But then the messages became something else. Tyler started texting her late at night, after Ethan had gone to sleep. At first, she told herself it was just because he was a night owl, that there was nothing wrong with talking. But deep down she felt the pull, an electric charge every time his name lit up her phone. His words became flirtatious, then personal, then something much more dangerous. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we met first?" The moment she read it, her heart pounded. It was a line she could pretend meant nothing, but she knew better. And the truth was, she had thought about it. More than once. The late-night texts soon turned into stolen moments. A chance meeting at a coffee shop. A car ride that lasted too long. A touch that lingered a second too long. Rachel convinced herself that as long as they didn't cross a physical line, it wasn't really cheating. But in her heart, she knew she had already betrayed Ethan in ways she couldn't take back. The first kiss happened 2 months before the wedding. It wasn't planned. She and Tyler had met for lunch under the excuse of discussing wedding logistics. They talked about Ethan, about the wedding, about the life she was about to start. "Are you happy?" Tyler had asked, his voice softer than usual. Rachel hesitated. She could have said yes, should have said yes. But she didn't. And then, suddenly, his lips were on hers. It was fast, impulsive, and when she pulled away she expected to feel guilt. Instead she felt something worse, relief. That was the moment she knew the wedding shouldn't happen. And yet she didn't stop it. Rachel spent the next few weeks in turmoil, torn between the life she had built with Ethan and the feelings she couldn't ignore for Tyler. Was it real, or was it just cold feet before the wedding? Was this true love, or just the allure of the forbidden? She told herself over and over again that Ethan was the better choice. He was safe. He was loyal. He had never given her a reason to doubt him. But that was the problem. Ethan was perfect and she wasn't. With Tyler things were different. He made her feel something reckless, something raw. But was it worth risking everything? Every time she tried to pull away, Tyler would find her, remind her that what they had was real. "We're lying to him every single day," Tyler whispered one night when they met in secret, his hands gripping her wrists. "If you marry him, it's a lie. Can you really do that?" Rachel didn't have an answer. But she knew she wasn't strong enough to walk away from either of them. On the morning of the wedding, Rachel stood in front of the mirror in her bridal suite, staring at the woman in the white dress. She barely recognized herself. Her mother fussed with her veil, her bridesmaids laughed and gushed about how perfect the day was, and her phone buzzed from well wishes pouring in. But there was only one message she cared about. "Tyler, one last chance. Meet me before you say, 'I do.'" Her hands trembled as she read it. This was it, the moment she had been dreading. The moment she had to decide. And yet she went. Rachel slipped away from her suite, heart pounding as she made her way down the hall. The hotel was bustling with wedding guests, but she barely noticed them. She found Tyler waiting in a secluded hallway near the back entrance. His face was tense, his jaw clenched, his usual charm replaced with something darker. "Say the word, Rachel," he murmured, stepping closer. "Tell me you love him and I'll walk away. But if there's even a part of you that wants me, don't do this. Don't marry him." Her throat was dry. She could hear the music playing downstairs, the guests finding their seats. Time was slipping away. "I can't," she whispered. "You can't what?" "I can't leave him." The words tasted like a lie, but they had to be true. She had made her choice. She had to marry Ethan. Tyler exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. His disappointment was palpable, but there was something else in his eyes, something she couldn't quite read. Neither of them noticed the hotel employee nearby, watching their intense conversation with quiet curiosity. Later, that same employee would tell police that Rachel and Tyler looked like two people at war with themselves. But at the time, it was just a moment, one of many stolen between them. A moment that would soon become evidence in a murder investigation. The wedding had been picture perfect. The vows were exchanged, the guests cheered, and Rachel Morgan and Ethan Walker had been pronounced husband and wife. The reception was a dazzling affair. Laughter, dancing, toasts filled with promises of forever. But beneath Rachel's radiant smile, something dark churned inside her. She had made her choice. She had married Ethan. Yet, as she stood beside him, her mind kept drifting to Tyler Brooks, the man she had secretly loved, the man she had left behind with nothing but a broken heart and a silent goodbye. Hours later, the dream wedding would turn into a nightmare. By dawn, Ethan would be dead. It was just after 2 a.m. when the call came in. 911, what's your emergency? Sobs crackled through the line before a panicked voice gasped, please. You have to send someone. There's blood everywhere. The frantic call came from Rachel herself. Moments later, police officers arrived at the honeymoon suite in the upscale hotel where the newlyweds were staying. They were met with a scene of chaos. The once pristine room was in shambles. A shattered mirror glistened under the dim light. Pieces of a lamp lay scattered across the carpet. The bed, made up just hours ago for the couple's first night as husband and wife, was soaked in blood. And there, lying lifeless on the floor, was Ethan Walker. A gunshot wound to the chest. His tuxedo shirt stained crimson. His wedding band still on his finger. Rachel, still in her white silk nightgown, was covered in blood. Her hands, her face, even the hem of her dress. It was an accident, she screamed when officers approached. He found out. He found out about me and Tyler, and things got out of control. Her cries echoed through the suite as paramedics checked Ethan for any sign of life. It was too late. The groom, the man who just hours ago had danced with his wife, toasted to a bright future, was gone. But was it really an accident? Or was there something far more sinister lurking beneath the surface? At the police station, Rachel was inconsolable. Through ragged sobs, she gave her version of events. According to her, the night had started normally. After the reception, she and Ethan had retreated to their suite, exhausted but happy. They talked about the day, reminisced about the speeches, laughed about how drunk some of their friends had gotten. It had all felt normal. Until it wasn't. Sometime after midnight, Ethan's demeanor shifted. He became tense, distant. Then, without warning, he confronted her. How long? He had demanded, his voice low and edged with something dangerous. Rachel had frozen. What are you talking about? How long have you been screwing my best friend? Her stomach dropped. He knew. Somehow he knew. Rachel claimed that she tried to deny it at first, but Ethan wasn't fooled. He was furious. Betrayed. He shouted, throwing a glass against the wall, demanding to know how she could do this to him. On their wedding day, no less. Then, things turned physical. Rachel said that Ethan grabbed her, shaking her, pushing her back against the dresser. In her panic, she fought back, trying to break free. I didn't mean for it to happen, she had cried. It was a mistake. But Ethan wouldn't listen. In his rage, he reached for the nightstand, where his father's old pistol was kept. Rachel said she tried to grab the gun, pleading with him to stop, to calm down. They struggled for control. And then the gun went off. Ethan collapsed, his hands clutching his chest. Blood poured from the wound. He gasped for breath, his eyes wide with shock. Rachel screamed. She dropped the gun. She rushed to him, pressing her hands against the wound, trying to stop the bleeding. But within seconds, Ethan was gone. It was an accident, she sobbed to the detectives. I loved him. I didn't mean to hurt him. It was a story of passion, betrayal, and a tragic accident. But was she telling the truth? At first, detectives considered Rachel's version of events plausible. Crimes of passion were common, especially when emotions ran high. The combination of a love triangle, betrayal, and a heated argument made for a tragic but understandable outcome. But then the forensic report came back. And suddenly Rachel's story didn't seem so convincing anymore. First there was the gunshot wound. If Ethan and Rachel had truly been struggling for the weapon, forensic experts expected to see a close-range entry wound, signs of a scuffle, possibly even residue on Rachel's hands or arms. But the report showed a clean, direct shot to the chest, fired from a distance. Then there was the trajectory. The bullet had traveled straight through Ethan's chest at an angle that suggested he wasn't lunging at Rachel or grappling for the gun. He was standing still. Even more chilling? The gun had no Ethan's fingerprints on it. Rachel had claimed they were both fighting over it. But according to forensic evidence, only Rachel had handled the weapon. And then there was the final nail in the coffin. Ethan had been drugged. A toxicology report found traces of a sedative in his system. One that would have left him sluggish, disoriented, and vulnerable. The kind of drug that could be slipped into a drink without someone noticing. The kind of drug that would make it nearly impossible to fight back. Rachel had painted a picture of a violent struggle, an accident fueled by emotions. But the evidence told a very different story, one that suggested Ethan Walker never even saw it coming. As detectives combed through the inconsistencies in Rachel's story, a chilling question arose: was she really the only one involved? Yes, Rachel had clear motive. She was caught in a love triangle, torn between her husband and another man. Maybe she panicked when Ethan found out. Maybe she saw no way out. But what about Tyler Brooks? He had been furious on the wedding day, desperate for Rachel to walk away. He had the most to gain from Ethan's death. Could Rachel have acted alone? Or was Tyler somehow involved in a premeditated plot to get rid of Ethan for good? Police weren't sure yet. But one thing was clear: this wasn't just an accident. This was murder. And someone somewhere was hiding the truth. The tragic death of Ethan Walker on what was supposed to be the happiest night of his life sent shockwaves through the community. What had started as a fairy tale wedding had ended in bloodshed, betrayal, and suspicion. At first, Rachel Morgan's tearful account of the events painted a picture of a tragic accident. A scorned husband, a struggle, and an unintentional gunshot. But the forensic report had already poked holes in her story. The gunshot trajectory, the absence of Ethan's fingerprints on the weapon, and the presence of a sedative in his system all suggested something much more sinister. As investigators dug deeper, new pieces of evidence emerged, and soon, the case took a dark and unexpected turn. It started with Rachel's phone. While her initial statement had placed all the blame on a heat-of-the-moment argument, detectives weren't convinced. Rachel claimed she had remained loyal to Ethan despite her lingering feelings for Tyler Brooks, but a digital forensic team uncovered something damning: a series of deleted messages between Rachel and Tyler. And they weren't just messages of regret or longing. They were discussions about Ethan. "I don't know how much longer I can do this. Every time I look at him, I feel guilty. It should have been you, not him. I feel trapped. I wish there was a way out. There is a way out." These messages, recovered from Rachel's phone, had been erased just hours before Ethan was killed. Even more chilling? The timestamps showed that Rachel had texted Tyler just minutes before Ethan's murder. "He knows." That was the last message she had sent before Ethan's lifeless body was found in their honeymoon suite. But the most damning evidence didn't come from Rachel's phone. It came from the hotel security footage. Investigators combing through hours of surveillance video made a shocking discovery: Tyler Brooks had been at the hotel that night. In the footage, he was seen entering the hotel lobby at 1:37 a.m., just 20 minutes before Ethan was shot. He wasn't dressed for a party. He wasn't carrying a gift or acting like a guest who had forgotten something. He looked nervous. He kept his head down, his hands shoved into his pockets. He took the back elevator, one that led directly to the honeymoon suite floor. Less than 30 minutes later, Tyler was seen leaving. His face tight, his stride quick. Rachel had claimed Ethan was alive and well until their argument turned violent. But security footage now proved Tyler had been in their room moments before the shooting. As investigators connected the dots, they turned to Ethan's closest friends. What they uncovered made the story even more chilling. Ethan had known something was wrong. In the days leading up to the wedding, he had confided in his best man, not Tyler but another childhood friend, Mark Davidson. According to Mark, Ethan had started to suspect Rachel was hiding something. "She's been distant lately. I feel like I don't even know her. I caught her texting someone the other night, and when I asked about it, she freaked out. Something's off. I just don't know what." Ethan had brushed it off at first. He wanted to believe in Rachel, in their love. But the day before the wedding, he had confronted her directly. "Tell me the truth. Is there someone else?" Rachel had laughed it off, telling him he was just nervous, that he was overthinking things. Ethan had let it go, because he wanted to believe her. But deep down he knew something wasn't right. And he wasn't wrong. Just when investigators thought they had pieced together the entire timeline, a chilling revelation surfaced. Ethan had left behind a voice memo. On his phone, recorded just hours before his death, was an audio file, his last message. The audio was shaky, his voice low. It sounded like he was pacing, his breathing uneven. "I don't know what's going on, but I feel like I'm being lied to. I saw Rachel sneaking off during the reception. I didn't say anything, but I know she was with him. I keep telling myself I'm imagining things, but what if I'm not? Then, his voice turned even quieter. If anything happens to me, please, make sure the truth comes out. It was the final nail in the coffin. Ethan had known. He had seen the signs. He had feared for his own safety. And now he was dead. Rachel's story was unraveling. Tyler was no longer just a jealous ex-lover. He was now a prime suspect in a conspiracy that ended in cold-blooded murder. But the biggest question remained: who had pulled the trigger? Was it Rachel? Was it Tyler? Or had they done it together? One thing was certain: this wasn't just a crime of passion. It was a premeditated act of betrayal. And someone was about to face justice. After months of investigations and mounting evidence, the case of Ethan Walker's murder was finally set to go to trial. It had captivated the small town and the media, with each detail of the love triangle, betrayal, and bloodshed making headlines. The question on everyone's mind was whether Rachel Morgan and Tyler Brooks would pay for their roles in Ethan's death, or if the jury would find them innocent. The prosecution wasted no time in laying out a compelling and devastating case against Rachel and Tyler. Their argument was straightforward. The couple had plotted to kill Ethan in order to be together. They began by painting a picture of premeditation, of a marriage founded on lies and infidelity. The prosecution highlighted the series of deleted messages between Rachel and Tyler, revealing their plans to escape together and their shared resentment toward Ethan. These messages didn't just reflect a brief affair. They showed a deep-seated conspiracy to get rid of him. We'll never be free unless he's out of the picture. If I could just tell him, but I know he'd never understand. I can't live this lie anymore, Tyler. It's time to do something about it. The prosecution also presented the hotel security footage, showing Tyler entering Ethan and Rachel's honeymoon suite just before the murder. They argued that Tyler had not only entered the room but had been the one to carry out the murder, with Rachel's consent or active involvement. They pointed to the forensic evidence, including the gunshot trajectory, the lack of Ethan's fingerprints on the weapon, and the presence of sedatives in his system, which suggested that Ethan had been drugged before the confrontation. These facts, combined with the deleted messages and Tyler's suspicious behavior, formed a damning case. The prosecution claimed that Tyler and Rachel were not acting in the heat of passion. They had meticulously planned Ethan's death, knowing full well that if they didn't act, their secret affair would be exposed. Ethan was an obstacle, and they saw murder as the only solution. Rachel's defense team, on the other hand, painted an entirely different picture. They argued that Rachel had acted in self-defense, not with the intention to kill her husband but because she feared for her life. According to the defense, Ethan had become violent and enraged after discovering the affair, leading to a fatal confrontation. The defense claimed that Ethan had suspected Rachel's infidelity for weeks and on the night of the wedding, had confronted her in a fit of rage. "I'll never let you leave me, Rachel. You'll regret this. I won't let you be with him." They described how Rachel was cornered by Ethan, who allegedly threatened her with physical violence after the confrontation. Tyler, seeing his best friend's violent tendencies, allegedly intervened to protect Rachel, but the situation quickly escalated. The defense claimed that Ethan's anger and unpredictable behavior forced Rachel to defend herself. They also pointed to the presence of the sedative in Ethan's system, suggesting that Rachel might have been drugged before the confrontation by Ethan, who had suspected her affair and wanted to control her. The defense's narrative was one of self-preservation, with Rachel acting under extreme duress when faced with a violent outburst from her husband. But despite their best efforts, the defense's argument seemed weak in the face of the overwhelming evidence that pointed toward a calculated plan, one that involved both Rachel and Tyler in the murder of Ethan Walker. The courtroom was filled with raw emotion as the Walker family took the stand. Ethan's parents, Susan and Charles Walker, gave heart-wrenching testimonies about their son, their grief pouring out with every word. Susan, her voice breaking, spoke about the son she had raised and the joy he had brought to her life. Ethan was kind. He was loyal. He didn't deserve to die the way he did. He didn't deserve to be betrayed by the people he trusted the most. Her tears were matched only by the anger and sorrow in Charles's eyes. "We've lost our son. And now we're fighting to make sure his death means something. We don't want this tragedy to be swept under the rug. We want justice." Their emotional testimony moved the jury and onlookers alike. The Walkers weren't just victims of a brutal crime. They were parents whose hearts had been shattered by the betrayal of a daughter-in-law they had welcomed into their family. Just as the trial seemed to be wrapping up, a bombshell witness came forward, someone who had remained silent up until that point. The witness was Jenna Michaels, a close friend of Tyler's from college. Jenna had always known that Tyler and Rachel had been having an affair, but what she revealed in court was even more shocking. "I was at the wedding and I saw Tyler and Rachel talking in private in the garden. It was right before the ceremony. They were arguing but then they started to laugh. And that's when I heard Tyler say something that I can't forget." Jenna paused as the courtroom leaned in. He said, "It's too late. We're already too far gone." This revelation sent waves of disbelief through the courtroom. Was this the moment Tyler had sealed Ethan's fate? Had they already decided at that point that Ethan would never live to see their wedding night? Jenna's testimony painted a picture of Rachel and Tyler's cold and calculated planning, adding an unsettling layer of betrayal. The defense had argued that Rachel acted out of fear, but Jenna's testimony suggested a much darker motive, a deliberate decision to eliminate Ethan to pave the way for their life together. The trial of Rachel Morgan and Tyler Brooks had captivated the small town and the public alike. Weeks of testimonies, shocking revelations, and emotional outbursts had led to this pivotal moment. The courtroom was packed, the tension nearly unbearable. After everything that had been said, the jury was tasked with answering one fundamental question. Did Rachel premeditate the murder of her husband Ethan Walker, or was it a tragic moment of passion, fueled by betrayal and anger? As the jury deliberated, the courtroom buzzed with nervous anticipation. In the end, it was clear that everyone had a different interpretation of what had happened on that fateful night in the honeymoon suite. For some, the evidence was clear. Rachel and Tyler's affair was not just a momentary lapse in judgment. It was a long-standing betrayal, one that had built up over time and ultimately led to Ethan's tragic death. The deleted messages, the hotel footage, and the bombshell testimony from Jenna Michaels all pointed to a level of premeditation that was hard to ignore. Others in the courtroom, however, felt a sense of sympathy for Rachel. They wondered if she had truly intended to murder her husband, or whether she had simply been caught up in a violent confrontation, pushed to her breaking point by a marriage built on lies. The defense had argued that she acted out of fear, that Ethan's violent reaction to her affair had triggered her actions. Was Rachel's crime a deliberate act of malice, or was it an emotional outburst in the heat of the moment? The jury's decision would ultimately hinge on their interpretation of these conflicting narratives. Equally significant was Tyler's role in the murder. Was he the mastermind pulling the strings behind Rachel's actions, or was he simply a man caught up in a situation he couldn't control? Tyler had been Ethan's best friend for years, and the two had shared countless memories. The betrayal was not only personal for Rachel but also for Tyler. As the trial unfolded, it became evident that Tyler had been more than just a passive bystander. He had been an active participant in the affair and had manipulated Rachel's emotions to fuel the growing resentment she had toward her husband. His presence at the crime scene, coupled with the unsettling testimony from Jenna, raised serious questions about his motivations. Had he truly acted in self-defense as the defense suggested, or had he been just as complicit in the murder as Rachel? The prosecution painted a picture of a man who had no hesitation in helping Rachel eliminate the obstacle that was Ethan. They argued that Tyler had been the one to fire the fatal shot, knowing that Rachel would be too emotionally frail to do it herself. But was Tyler simply a manipulator who used Rachel as a pawn, or was he as guilty as she was? The courtroom waited, holding its collective breath for the final judgment. When the verdict came down, Rachel Morgan and Tyler Brooks were both found guilty of first-degree murder. The jury had concluded that their affair, their deceit, and their shared role in Ethan's death had been deliberate and premeditated. The family and friends of Ethan Walker had been waiting for this moment with a mixture of hope and dread. Ethan's parents, Susan and Charles Walker, had been devastated by the loss of their only son. The courtroom was somber as they processed the news. "I just don't understand how it happened," Susan whispered, her voice shaking. "We trusted her, we trusted them both. Now Ethan is gone and our family will never be the same." Charles, who had been quiet throughout the trial, finally spoke up. "Justice was served, but no amount of punishment will bring my boy back. I'll never see his face again, never hear his voice. This is the price we've paid for trusting the wrong people." Rachel's parents, in contrast, remained largely silent. Their daughter's fate weighed heavily on them. How could the same girl they had raised to adulthood now be convicted of such a heinous crime? The emotional toll was unbearable for both families, who now had to find a way to move on after their lives had been shattered. And what of Tyler? He had lost everything, his best friend, his love, his future. But it was hard to muster much sympathy for the man who had so willingly participated in a betrayal that led to a man's death. His role in the murder was clear, and even though he had tried to present himself as the victim of an emotionally unstable situation, the jury saw through his defense. Tyler would spend the rest of his life behind bars, facing the consequences of his actions. As we come to the end of this tragic tale, we're forced to confront a dark truth. Love, the very thing that's supposed to bring people together, that should create bonds of trust and loyalty, can sometimes be the very thing that tears lives apart. The story of Rachel Morgan, Tyler Brooks, and Ethan Walker is a chilling reminder of just how easily love can twist into something far more dangerous. What began as a romantic fairy tale, the kind we all dream of, ended in betrayal, murder, and heartbreak. Hidden affairs, jealousy, and manipulative behavior all played their parts in this twisted triangle. But the question remains, how much of it was truly about love, and how much was just a tragic, dangerous game of obsession? In Rachel's case, we saw a woman caught between guilt and passion. Did she act in cold blood, plotting Ethan's murder with Tyler all along? Or did the overwhelming emotions of betrayal, guilt, and fear take over in a single tragic moment? And what of Tyler? Was he a manipulative force, or was he simply an accomplice to a crime that spiraled out of control? These are questions we may never fully answer, but they leave us with something important to think about. And it's not just a question for the characters involved, but for all of us watching. What would we do in their shoes? How much can love or jealousy cloud our judgment? Could we ever let emotions dictate our actions to the point where something irreversible happens? Now, I want to know what you think about this case. Was it a calculated act of murder, carried out by two people who were willing to do whatever it took to be together? Or was it more of an impulsive crime of passion, a moment of uncontrollable rage and heartbreak? Maybe it's a little of both? The line between love and destruction is often thin, and in this case, it couldn't have been thinner. So let me hear from you. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Was this a planned betrayal, or was it a deadly mistake? Can love ever truly lead to something like this, or were other factors at play here? Let's talk about it. If you found this story as shocking and heartbreaking as I did, be sure to hit that subscribe button for more gripping true crime stories. We dive into the darkest corners of human behavior, uncovering the twisted motivations behind some of the most shocking crimes in history. Don't miss out on the next chapter of chilling real-life drama. Subscribe now so you can stay updated on all our latest investigations. Thanks for watching, and remember, always stay curious, stay informed, and never underestimate the lengths people will go for love, or the dangers that come with it.